By 1944, Poland had been under occupation for nearly 5 years, and Warsaw had become a city living underground. On the surface, German patrols, curfews, executions and hunger defined daily life. Beneath it, an invisible state operated in parallel. Courts, schools, newspapers, and an army that answered not to Berlin, not to Moscow, but to a government in exile that was growing increasingly powerless. Jan Nowak-Jeziorański was one of the few men capable of moving between those two worlds. As a courier, his job was not to fight, but to connect realities that were drifting dangerously apart. London planned politics. Warsaw planned survival. Between them lay occupied Europe, Gestapo networks, Soviet intelligence, and the constant risk that one mistake would end everything. When Nowak left Warsaw for London earlier in the war, he carried reports of German terror and Polish resistance. When he returned in 1944, he carried something far more dangerous: the truth that Poland's allies were already making decisions without Poland. In meetings with British leaders and Polish politicians in exile, the message was blunt. Warsaw was too far east. Air support would be limited. The Polish parachute brigade would not be deployed. The Soviets, despite public declarations, were under no obligation to help an independent Polish uprising. The city might rise, but it would rise alone. The problem was timing. Inside Warsaw, German units were withdrawing, bridges were being prepared for demolition, and Soviet artillery could be heard across the river. To the underground leadership, this looked like a fleeting window. If they waited, the Soviets would enter first and install their own authority. If they acted, they could greet the Red Army as hosts, not subjects. Nowak knew how thin that hope was. His return journey was a study in improvisation and luck. Parachute drops, broken bones, missed connections, villages searched by SS units, trains crawling through bombed railways, and identity checks where one wrong accent or missing hat could mean death. At one point, he had to learn how to ride a bicycle as an adult, because it was the only way forward. At another, he watched civilians pay with their lives simply for being near him. Every hour mattered. Every delay narrowed his chances of reaching the Home Army command before the decision became, well, irreversible. When he finally reached Warsaw, the city was already vibrating with expectation. Weapons were being distributed. Units were mobilizing. Civilians whispered about the coming moment. The W hour had a date. The tragedy was not ignorance. It was awareness without consensus. The commanders understood the risks. They knew the Soviets might stop at the river. They knew the Western Allies would not intervene decisively. But they also knew what surrendering initiative meant in a country that had already been erased once from the map. Nowak delivered his messages. He spoke of London's position, of Allied limits, of political reality. He warned that the uprising would not force the hand of the great powers. He did everything a courier could do. But, you know, a courier does not command. On August 1st, 1944, at 5 in the afternoon, Warsaw rose. For 63 days, the city fought one of the most unequal battles of the war. Young men with pistols faced tanks. nurses performed surgery in basements, entire districts were burned street by street. The Red Army stopped on the eastern bank of the Vistula and waited. When it was over, Warsaw was a graveyard of ruins, and the underground state lay crushed. Jan Nowak-Jeziorański survived. Many did not. After the war, he spent his life telling this story not to assign blame, but to preserve truth. Not the myth of heroic inevitability and not the lie of pointless sacrifice, but, well, the reality of impossible choices made under unbearable pressure. The Warsaw Uprising was not a failure of courage. It was a collision between human will and, honestly, geopolitical indifference. And sometimes history doesn't turn because the wrong decision was made. Sometimes it turns because really no decision was left that didn't lead to disaster. If this story added something real to your understanding of World War II, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Share this video with someone who thinks they already know the war, and, leave a comment with your thoughts. These stories only survive if we keep telling them.